Scrum accountability and the rights of the developers. The developers, like other areas of the organization, do not have these inherent rights. The rights need to be granted to them. Sometimes we call these prerogatives, the prerogatives of the developers. So you cannot assume that your developers have these rights. You have to verify that management, that the organization has agreed that these rights make sense to the organization. The developers first have the right to experiment with changes in the interest of continuous improvement. They could be experimenting with changes to the product or experimenting with changes to the processes that they're using to develop that product. Now, that might seem fairly harmless on the surface. Keep in mind, please, that if you agree that your developers have the right to experiment, that means you accept the possibility that some of those experiments might fail. They might not turn out in a manner that's going to improve what they were attempting to accomplish. Can we recognize that those failed experiments are actually learning opportunities? They're not really failures. They're opportunities for our developers to understand what works and what doesn't work, and that those experiments, even if they don't turn out the way we thought, will result in us being better than we were before. Second, our developers have the right to say no. If you're a product owner or potentially other people outside of the Scrum team are pushing work to your developers in a manner that causes your developers to be concerned about the quality of their work, developers have the right to say, stop, hold on. We understand what you're asking us to do, but we're becoming so overloaded that we're jeopardizing the quality of our work. Now, underneath that, we can understand the sentiment that our developers are trying to uphold their profession, just like we all are. And part of that professional expectation is that they're maintaining good quality. High pressure environments with excessive amounts of work, often resulting with people working extra hours, usually, quite often, understandably, will impact the quality of that work in some way. Third, our developers are the only ones in the organization that can provide an estimate for the work in which they are about to engage. Even in an organization where some other people, some tech leads, some really smart, experienced people will provide some high level estimates, even though they're not part of the team that's going to actually build it, even in those organizations, when the work is presented to the developers with estimates, the developers have the right to say, thank you for providing those estimates. It gives us an idea of what other people are thinking. We will now estimate it for ourselves. Even if you disagree with allowing your developers to re-estimate, it's going to happen anyway when the developers go into the how discussion of sprint planning. Even if their product backlog items have been pre-estimated for them, by default, they will have to re-estimate simply by planning the work of the sprint. Now, if you're in a situation where developers cannot even plan the work of the sprint, that's a whole different problem. But the opportunity that we normally look at in sprint planning for the team to plan the work actually turns into a necessity, particularly if estimates are coming at the developers from some other area. Now, there may be more rights that you decide make sense in your organization, but these are the three basic rights that I would expect us to at least to discuss if we're going to establish the Scrum framework.